to Season 5 of the Hey Girl podcast with your host and my mom, Bethany Needham. This season, we get to hear from some incredible new guests, and we're bringing back some of our faves. Each guest will share their story of running their race in their place, and we hope they inspire you to do the same. If you want more information or to connect with my mom, go follow our new Instagram at HeyGirlGram, friend us on Facebook at HeyGirlPod, or even better, join our brand new Patreon to get bonus materials, hang with my mom, and you get to help Hey Girl continue to grow and reach more people. That's pretty cool. All right, time to grab that seltzer and maybe a tissue box just in case. Here's my mom.
All right, girls, welcome back to another special episode of the Hey Girl podcast. We are in our favorites release. So if you were with us before, you've already heard some of our favorites, but I cannot wait to introduce you to today's because they're kind of amazing. And we probably had to edit more than normal because we just got talking and couldn't stop. But once again, I get to sit here not by myself alone in my closet per usual, but here at my kitchen table with one of my all-time favorites, Laura Casoni. Welcome again.
That's me. Hello. Hello.
Are you excited to be here?
I am always excited to be here.
Laura, we mentioned this before, but I think we all know that whether we want to admit it or not, all of us have favorites. You and I, we have favorite episodes of Hey Girl, which obviously we're releasing some of those now. So those episodes that don't release have now been publicly informed that they are not our favorites. No. We love you.
I made the
just
episode.
Not our favorite.
You didn't boot me. Yay!
Which is what I tell one of my children all the time. So, Laura, what I really would like to know before we get into this episode is, of all of the Teletubbies in the Teletubby world, which Teletubby is your favorite?
I can't say that any of them are my favorite, but I think I liked the purple one.
Purple Teletubby? Do they have names?
I don't know.
We should probably have researched this ahead of time. If you're listening now and you're a Teletubby expert, feel free to write us and let us know what is the name of the purple Teletubby, because it's Laura's favorite and she would like to send fan mail immediately.
That's right.
So, Laura, today we get to introduce a favorites episode that I got to do with these two hilarious and amazing women. There is Laura Walton and Johnna Hold.
Oh, no, I think it's Laura Walton. And this is something so crucial because I'm Laura, and I'm pretty sure she's Lara. Yeah.
I feel like I want to phone a friend to my dear friend, Laurie Casagrande. I can't.
You have so many Lauras and Laras.
Seriously, somebody needs to explain this to me in a way. If it's Lau, which is what you are.
Yes.
And so is Laura Walton. Why do you say it differently?
All I know is this is how you say my name. You used to call me Lara at the beginning.
Oh.
I know. I just waited patiently for this moment,
guys,
to make sure that you know the difference.
Laras and Lauras are no longer my favorite. I'm taking you all out. I cannot keep track. So, Johnna Hold.
Yes, back to that one.
And Laura Walton, these honestly are incredible women. They have their own podcast, which is All Things Good Podcast. You can look them up. They are hilarious. You should follow them each individually and their podcast. But I really, really enjoyed doing this interview, getting to know them. I'm pretty sure you enjoyed this episode as well.
Oh, I did. It was awesome. It was hilarious. I want to aspire to be Lara, but I still want to keep my name Laura.
Fair. I will aspire to be half as funny as Johnna Hold just at any point in my life, and it'll be incredible. So without further ado, grab your seltzer, a warm, cozy blanket, and maybe an ugly sweater like Laura is wearing today.
We're calling this an ugly sweater?
Enjoy the episode. Okay, so Johnna and Laura in the house. I just wanted to say both of your names with so much enunciation because we've been chatting for a few minutes already. True confessions to our listeners.
Yes.
And the one thing that is going to be very evident in this entire episode is that I do not know how to enunciate anything, and that Southern accents are amazing. So we're just going to go with that.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the first time we're meeting face to face via Zoom call because we're real spread out here. Why don't you just real quick introduce yourself? Johnna, we'll start with you. Tell me like who you are and where you at right now.
Right now, I'm in my home office in Austin, Texas, technically Georgetown, but it's like you don't tell people you're from Georgetown. You say Austin. I'm from Alabama, from Tuscaloosa, Roll Tide, and I live in Austin. My husband, hey, Laura, it's not your turn. It's not your turn. So, yeah. And so, but yes, I live in Austin, Texas. My husband's from here and brought me back. Laura, where are you from?
Apparently not Roll Tide country.
No. I am also in my home office, but I am on the Mississippi Gulf Coast in Pascagoula, Mississippi. We recently moved as far south as you can go without going into the water, from North Mississippi near Starkville, Hale State, which is where I teach in the College of Business, and I grew up in Arkansas, so we truly have the whole South covered. So these accents are not for show, y'all. They real.
This is the real deal. Now, the one that I'm going to develop over the next hour is completely made up and influenced strongly by my guests.
You're welcome.
I have been warned.
Yeah.
All right, ladies. Well, first of all, I'm excited to hear more of your story. The connection here was my girl, Christine, who's been doing booking for the podcast. She met you or was aware of your ministry through her own Noonday ministry. And so she reached out. She's like, you're going to love these girls. I'm so excited for you to interview them. And you all have your own podcast, which we'll get to as well, which I always think is so fun when you get to sit down with someone who does this. Fun and like terrifying. Fun because I'm like, yay, they do this too. Terrifying and like, oh, they're probably professional and this is going to be real embarrassing.
No. That's a no. Laura was trying to find her converter leading up to this. Because we don't use one.
I love that Johnna's like example for being unprofessional is let me throw Laura under the bus on why we are not professional.
Always. If you listen to the podcast, always.
I need to get myself a co-host again just for that.
Yeah. Just to have somebody. Yeah.
It's important. Yeah. I'll just throw my dog under the bus. She's just laying over here doing nothing next to me. So
yeah. Well, that's better than mine. They're outside like fighting right now. So I'm just trying to throw food at them so they'll be quiet.
Oh, that's a lot like parenting.
Yeah. Yeah. Or myself. So, yeah.
So I would love to hear from each of you, and we'll go with Laura on this one. Let's go back to tell me a little bit about the start of your faith journey. Like, when did you first meet Jesus? What did that it sounds like a real when did you meet Jesus?
That was very Southern.
Yes. Okay. I would say I grew up in the church. So as far as meeting Jesus, it happened real early. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and I was baptized at 7. Walked down the aisle. My dad and I were actually baptized on the same night, which was kind of a cool thing. But I don't really feel like, as far as my spiritual growth, I don't really feel like that began until later on in high school, when I really began to understand what it was like to to walk with Jesus daily and to face temptations. Because when you're 7, I mean, let's be honest, there's not a whole lot of temptation that's, it's not coming at you. So until I got to the teenage years, I really didn't understand what that looked like. And then I went to college, and that got a little rocky as far as my faith journey. For lack of a better way to phrase it, experienced freedom I had never felt before from my parents. Got a little dicey there for a little bit. So found myself married and divorced at 25 years old. That was really hard and really challenged my faith in ways that I was not prepared for, honestly. Had a little bit of a break from the church due to some church hurt with going through the divorce, and then entered the Rev, my current husband, and he's amazing. And I feel like was one of the ways that God brought me back, one, to him, but also to the church. I guess we had been married about 3 years and went to a spiritual retreat. He went the weekend before. It's called Emmaus. He went the weekend before. I went the next weekend. And I feel like that is a defining point in my faith where I truly learned how, one, to forgive myself for all of the college years and to turn away from, just really began to grow in faith, I think, at that point. So, and then a few years later, the Lord brought us into ministry full time. Jeff is a pastor and started in youth ministry, which was such a gift. When we had young kids, we had all of these kids who just loved on our kids, our babies, and just a beautiful picture of the gospel as far as discipleship when those kids didn't even really know what they were doing. Here we are still in ministry. Now he's a lead pastor, just trying to walk alongside and support him. Obviously, I think for me, faith is an up and down thing. I have seasons where I am in the Word daily and I am faithful and praying, and then I have seasons where either life gets busy or something happens and I'm not as faithful with that. What I think is so cool about the way that Jesus loves us is he's always pursuing us wherever we are in that season, right? That's kind of my story in a nutshell.
I love it's language I use a lot because it's so close to my own heart, but that idea of God's pursuit of us. Mm-hmm. And I probably overstate this in so many conversations, but I talk a lot about the power of the gospel is not that we got ourselves cleaned up and went before God, but that he met us in our mess. Mm-hmm. So you talked through, obviously that was a lot of life from, young child making that faith decision in your high school years, kind of starting to wrestle through I always think of about that as like understanding God as our savior is so much easier to capture as a kid, but then the lordship of God, the fact that, and that was for me similar in teen years, was coming to that place of like, okay, but what does it actually mean to like follow Jesus, for him to be on the throne in my heart kind of faith.
Right. I was going to say too, at that time too, that's really, I feel like when your faith becomes your own. And if you're raised, for me, being raised in the church, my parents were both believers. My faith was very much a product of theirs. And while that's amazing and a beautiful example of the way that the Lord wants us to parent our children, it can, if there's not true roots there when they get to college and those parents are no longer right in front of them leading them, that can be a little bit of a bumpy road for some people. And so I think from that, I learned really, even now with my 12 and 9-year-old, want them to start to develop their faith now, their faith, not what we've taught them or what we have modeled for them, but how do you defend your faith now? How do you gird yourself up now so that when you do get to those points, you don't fall. So, and not that they won't fall, because they will, but teaching them how to get back up from that too. So, yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because it was in all of your story, a question or a thought that comes to mind is, because we have a lot of young moms or moms with all ages of kids. And as a mom of a high school and middle schooler, these are the things that are on our heart so much, right? It's like, okay, but what I have my son, I don't even like to say it out loud. This kills my mama heart, but I'm like, we're 2.5 years away from like high school graduation and him like leaving the nest. So you shared that part of your testimony. I love that you described it. Got a little dicey in college.
Got a little right bumpy in there.
Yeah, a little bumpy. Tell me though, from your perspective, as someone who kind of grew up in the church, as much as you're comfortable, that journey, a couple of things. What is there something when you look back that you're like, these are the things that I kind of wish were in place when I went to college? And then the other side of that, I guess, what are the things as you went into that season that you're like, I honestly believe like God leads us on these journeys where you're like, listen, all of these things were great. I had parents that loved Jesus, but these are the things that I faced once I got to college, that there wasn't necessarily like, oh, it was something missing, therefore I went down this path.
I think I grew up in a church environment and possibly even in a home environment, when I think about it, where there were a lot of no's, don't do this because God says not to. Well, that's a fantastic reason, right? But unless your faith is where it should be, which, let's be honest, whose is at 16 years old or 17 years old or even 20 years old? You're still, this whole frontal lobe thing still working itself out. And so decision making, not our best, right? And so really thinking through, how do we parent our kids where they understand, I'm not creating arbitrary rules for you, or God didn't create these arbitrary rules for you. He's trying to guide you toward the best life that he has for you. Right? Instead of, because when you've been, and I use the word sheltered, I think my parents would probably agree with that. I don't want to at all attack their parenting. They did the best they could, just like we're doing the best that we can. But I lived a very sheltered life and didn't get to experience a lot of things. So when I got to college and had all of this freedom, nobody checking to make sure that I was home at a certain time, had access to alcohol and other things that I did not have access to living the sheltered life that I lived. And it spiraled out of control very fast. It was a real situation. So helping our kids understand that we're not creating these rules out of a desire to be like mean and like keep them from having fun. And we're doing that, one, to protect them, but two, to get them onto a path that will be the best life that God has for them. Right. And not trying to keep them from something that they think at that time, and I thought at that time, was fun and exciting, and it was. Let's call sin what it is. That's why it's so attractive. It is that it is, in the moment, enjoyable. And so as far as what should have been there, I would say giving our kids some room to make decisions when they have a safety net to fall back in before they get to the college years. And I also think, of course, no one really said, hey, when you get to college, you're going to go completely crazy. You should put some things in place. It was more like, you're going to go to college and have so much fun. Nobody talked about what that fun looked like, and that I was going to need this group of people to like shepherd me. And gosh, some mornings just make sure I made it home, and making sure that your kids are surrounded by kids who are also rooted in faith. For me, will be the greatest gift to sending them off into college, is to know that they have friends who are pursuing the same things that they are. So,
And honestly, I appreciate so much you just saying the sin is fun for a season. So when I worked in church ministry, I worked in youth ministry. And one of the things that I realized for youth, that I kind of grew up it sounds like a very similar childhood to you, where I grew up hearing a lot of like, don't do this because God said so. But the actual, that kind of vision sounds like a funny word, but that vision of like that God had this better plan. But the part that I think the church, or at least the people in my life, were afraid to talk about was just acknowledging that there was also this alternative called like a good life. This sounds bad, but like that I could also just choose this good, like do things for fun, what feels good. It didn't even have to be like extreme sin. It could just be this kind of mediocre, good decision. But even that was missing out on the best that God had for me. I just think when I think about my own kids, it's like, how do I communicate this to my kids? It's like, this isn't even about controlling you. I know you sometimes feel that way, like I'm trying to control things, which in my mother flesh, sometimes I want to. I was like, but I've lived enough life to know there's not just this sinful side that's going to tug at you. There's also this kind of just good life that is not God's best. All right, Johnna, I want to know, did it get dicey for you in college?
Yeah.
Bethany.
Yeah. Yeah. So William is our dicey. That's so I, much like Laura, and sounds like you as well, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. I was first grade whenever I accepted Jesus as my personal savior. I remember exactly where I was saying the prayer with my mom. I got baptized about a year later. It was such an exciting time. I remember being so excited to call my grandparents and tell them. And then kind of the new, I guess, kind of wore off, the excitement, all of that. And then I kind of got into it, but I always was a good kid. Like I was always the kid that I'm a 2 on the Enneagram. So is Laura, and we want to be loved. We want to people to like us. We want all the things, to appear, I guess that sounds horrible, but to appear kind of good. And then when it got into high school, things started to shift, and I was really I was struggling because I knew I didn't want to do certain things, but I also knew that meant I wouldn't be accepted, or I wouldn't be, cool, or whatever that looked like. And then my dad got really sick. The prognosis wasn't good. He's still alive today. Praise the Lord. But I just was like, wait a minute, God, I've been so good my whole life. I kind of realized that I didn't realize until much later that I really viewed him as a good works God. Like I did this, but you didn't come through. In college, I decided to sow my wild oats as well. I didn't go away. I went down the street, but I still, didn't live at home. I met my now husband, who is from Austin, did not grow up a Christian, did not grow up in church. He believed that there was a God, but did not have a personal relationship with him. We ended up getting pregnant before we got married. And growing up in Alabama, and that, frowned upon. So I felt like the biggest failure. I felt like I had disappointed everyone. I had ruined my parents' dreams. I had let God down. And sort of a crazy side story is I had severe endometriosis and was told I could never have kids. So there was this like shocking aspect on multiple levels, but so it's like I felt bad for being so upset. And then Will, my husband, he had been going to FCA. He played football, and he heard Jeremiah Castile speak. And it reminds me a lot of what Laura said. And one of the biggest things that really kind of shifted his perspective, and he went to FCA because he didn't really know anyone. He moved from Austin. But Jeremiah Castile said, raise your hand if you think sinning's fun. And Will said, nobody raised their hand. And he's like, why are you not raising your hand? Sinning is super fun. And, and he said, that's the first time I had heard it put into like something I could understand. Like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not just,
Yeah.
But all of that to say, so we ended up getting pregnant. There was no other option. Like I was going to have the baby. Then we got married. I was very adamant. I will not marry you because I'm pregnant, because divorce, I'm not going to then, divorce you. Like I would rather us just have an And he's like, I love you so much. And I knew I was in love with him. Like that wasn't a question, but the insecurity set in big time. Ended up having William, our son, who has just been an incredible, incredible blessing and a huge part of our testimony. My husband will say, really in the hospital when William was born, he looked at him and said, if God could love me so much to give me this son and this wife in the middle of sin and not seeking him, I will give my life to him. And we did our life, not that it's been perfect by any means, but we have tried to constantly pursue him. And we have a daughter that's 11. Our son is 15. So hearing you say that about your son, like 2.5 more years, I cry about once a week just because William and I are super close, and we are very open and honest with him about his part in our testimony and our story. And it's been really, I don't know, it's been a catalyst for me to be able to share that with teenagers. I was asked to speak to our old youth group, and it was funny because the youth pastor, who's our friend, was like, hey, we've been talking about, like the True Love Waits series. We wanted you to come speak. I was like, so that like William, and he's like, no, I know, but it's the very last session. And there's people, we've been talking this whole time to this youth group. And there's people that this doesn't apply to because they've already made that choice. They've already crossed that boundary. And I don't want them to feel like they are forgotten or unlovable or past the point of no return. He's like, so I want you to speak to them about that. And I would say, like, our constant verse is, what the devil intends for bad, the Lord intends for good. And so he took our story that could have really shamed us and just turned it into something beautiful.
You were like hitting on all these heart, like, those things that you're like, oh, yep. Okay.
Yeah.
All the feels. Yeah. First of all, a couple of things I wanted to say just before I forget. FCA's Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Yes.
I know down south that's like it's a much more common, and we do have FCA up here, but it's not nearly as like common.
Yeah.
You talked about being asked to come and speak at a True Love Waits. One of the things, first of all, the three of us together, I feel like we grew up in these alternate, like, we're different places, but very similar upbringings. Uh-huh. And it's interesting that even though maybe our stories are different, struggles, things we walk through, it seems like a shared struggle is coming to this place in our faith of feeling like we are dealing with a works God, that if I keep doing the right things, then, and I wouldn't even say it was like necessarily a prosperity gospel in my mind, like, that I knew that hard times would come. But in my mind, God's favor towards me was very much wrapped up in my behavior and the things that I did. So if I do good things, therefore God will be happy with me. But if I make the wrong decision, he's going to be angry with me. And that was just the way that I lived my life. And so sexual purity is something that was a huge topic of conversation when I was in high school. True Love Waits was a major, I'm going to guess to say that we all are around the same age. If this is in terms of, I'm going to be like, say your age. Just kidding.
I'm always the baby because I did have a kid in college. So.
All right, Johnna, now you have to say your age. You're 36.
I'm 36.
Okay. So
I'm 43.
You're what, 43? Oh, you're not old. Mm-hmm. Stop it. Okay, you ready, Johnna? I'm actually the baby.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I win something for not being the baby.
I lost something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
it's fine.
I'm 35, so we're real close in age. So same kind of that generation of True Love Waits. I really wrestled through my high school years in dating with the physical side of any relationship that I was in, because I grew up with this idea of, and this is not, sorry to bash True Love Waits. I feel like I do that sometimes, but where I think the message got skewed was when somewhere along the way, rather than being taught about that God had this better plan and that he was calling me to this life of purity, that got translated, whether it was actually said or just translated in my own mind, to my virginity is my purity.
Yes.
And if I give that up before marriage, like there's no going back. There was a line in the sand. There were those that sit on the other side. Yeah.
You're unlovable.
Basically that there would always be consequences to that. And depending on the video or the speaker, it was either terrible STDs or even like it was preached, like you could get pregnant. Like literally pregnancy was put as this like ultimate scarlet letter.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was almost like this fear, the fear of sex. We're just going to go there. I haven't said JJ yet, except I just said
there.
it. So beep. beep.
Okay. Sorry to Bethany's husband. Yeah.
So here's the thing. I ended up getting married very, very young. And I would put myself in that camp of people who I met my husband when I was 16. We dated. Our physical side of our relationship progressed very quickly. Like it became an immediate temptation, which I think to this day, I'm like, if you are spiritually close to somebody, emotionally close to someone, the physical is going to naturally want, because you're a one being kind of person. So, and we didn't do well with that. And I remember thinking, we either need to get married or we need to break up, because here's what I can't do. I can't have sex with you before we get married, because by the way, here's all the things.
Because that's worse than,
because that's the ultimate whatever, which led us down this whole path of, well, what is sex and what is not? And like, what can we do that's not sex and what can
we get away with?
How close can we get to the line?
Yeah.
Without getting
pregnant.
Exactly. Because
I'll tell you, it's the line.
She's like, let me tell you where the line is. Because purity was a line. Like in my mind, purity was a line connected to a ring, which for me, actually, I got the necklace, not the ring.
Oh gosh.
Right? It's this line.
This is like the Jonas Brothers
that
thing.
Like once it's crossed, like goodbye, we're done.
Yeah, bye. Yeah, you got to burn it.
And so we got married. I was 18. We got married. I ended up getting pregnant right away. And
you crossed the line is what you're saying.
Actually, here's what I will say. And I think this is important to say. And I love that we're in a safe kind of, well, us and thousands of the people listening right now.
I was just thinking to say safe right now, but soon to be thousands of other people.
But I feel like
she's like, I have
needs
the edit
to be
button.
vulnerable. Of course, my husband, poor guy, is the one that I'm about to be vulnerable about. I came into marriage feeling.
We might be the same person. I'm very vulnerable about other people.
Any second now, I'm going to throw Laura under the bus. No, just kidding.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I came into marriage with this necklace. Literally, my husband and I exchanged these things because technically I had not crossed that line before we said, I do. But in my heart, in my soul, in my very being, I knew even then that this can't be it. Like, this can't be the thing. Like, because sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, this is it. Yeah. Like, that's kind of
also, I'm like, I don't feel like I came into this as God. Like, this can't be God's design, because you know what? Here's the vulnerability. I barely came in on, if there was a line on this side of the line, I found every loophole and addendum, whatever, to this rule, which is not at all the best that God's called us to do.
Yeah.
And at 18, I was really just like still in this place of, I do this, I don't do this. And I came in, and to be honest, marriage for us sucked at the beginning. It was so terrible. I love him now, but I actually remember 2 weeks in going to my friend Sarah, poor Sarah, if she's listening. And because she wasn't married, I probably devastated her. She did end up getting married, but I was like, I hate him. I absolutely hate him. And I can't even believe but I was like,
this is what I waited for.
Like, I hate this man. What is happening right now? And praise Jesus, we serve a God of redemption, right? And I look at, like, I'm looking at 3 screens here. A God that can redeem marriage and divorce, or actually having sex before marriage, or doing everything but quote unquote sex before marriage. And stepping into a marriage that I had no business, maturity, anything else to be stepping into. And what is it? It's the Ephesians 2, but God, right? But God. And I hear this in your story talking about you would look at this 15-year-old, which my son's 15. He's about to turn 16, but he's 15 right now.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I'm like, this, in fact, I have it tattooed on my arm in Latin, by grace alone. Like when God enters our stories and what he's able to do with all the junk we lay before him, that's like this is part of Hey Girl, what you talk about and your podcast, your ministry, everything. Like this is the story we get to tell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes back to like, you know, I was talking to someone the other day and I kind of figured out that they had a similar story because they celebrated their anniversary and I know how old their son is kind of thing. And I was like, oh, you know, and she's like, yeah, he hasn't figured it out yet, which first I was like, is he done? You know, but I was like, but the second I was like, she said, oh, does William know? I said, he's always known because I never want him to hear it from someone else and think that when we hit it, and it kind of goes back to Laura talking about being sheltered. Like I want to be able to say, hey, I know this might be appealing because listen, we did it. Like literally, you know, and it's like, we did it. And it's like, I want to talk to you about consequences, but also just what that does to your soul. Like, and those are things that take forever to heal. And I know I went to counseling because I really struggled with feeling like I owed everybody else an apology, like my parents, my husband's parents, my husband, like all these things. And my counselor just looked at me and he's like, you serve a God of forgiveness. And I was like, yeah, I know. And he's like, but like, and he's like, I don't know if you're comprehending. And I'm like, he's like, you have to forgive yourself. And I was like, that's going to be hard, you know? And he's like, you have to love yourself and forgive yourself. And that's something to this day that I struggle with, like loving myself fully and, you know, understanding how God can love me in all of my messed up ways. But being a parent is such a beautiful example because my kids can screw up all day long and drive me up a wall and disappoint me and all this, but I still love them and I would do anything for them. So how much more must God love me? You know, it's like, yeah, you messed up, but I'm not going to let you get in the way of my plan and my will for your life. You can try all you want, but my will be done. So
I love that.
I think it's just the redemption story is just a constant thread with Laura and I both, and with you. And I think that's what's really just brought us together and just made our friendship so strong.
So this is what I want to know. When did you come together? Because we've kind of kept these stories separate, but obviously you're friends, geographically separated.
Her first husband is my now husband. No, I'm just kidding.
This gets better and better.
Wouldn't that be the best podcast?
This is also the Jerry Springer podcast.
And how do you feel about that, Laura?
Yeah.
It's fine, y'all. It's fine.
That is something you should know about Laura and I. We can take the words, it's fine. It's one word in our vocab. And then it's like the narrator would say, in fact, it is not fine. And so it's fine. It's fine. Okay, Laura, you say how we met.
Okay. So New Day Collection, we were both ambassadors. I think the first time we met face to face was at a conference, right?
Yeah.
At Shine. And I think Johnna's exact words were, I want to go to Haiti with you. And I was like, okay.
What's your name?
Nice to meet you. Johanna.
Yes.
And then I never talked to her again. So yeah. No.
But no, I was working in ministry for an organization called Hispaniola Mountain Ministries and was taking groups of people into Haiti several times a year. And I had was it after that? I had just taken a group. So I had just taken 13 or 14 New Day ambassadors.
Not me.
It was not a part of the group, but clearly
she's not salty about it.
Yeah,
it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm proud of you, Bethany. And ask me if I've been to Haiti yet. No.
Oh, this might be worse than one to be married to the other one's spouse.
I know.
That's on me though.
We had a little redirect in our ministry. So anyway, I think that was it. And then we ended up traveling together the next summer. Was that it? Or was there?
I think so. Okay. I think that was it.
Traveled together with Noonday Collection to Guatemala. spent a week together just enjoying that beautiful country, getting to meet our artisan partners there. And we just clearly hit it off and realized we were pretty much the same person, I think, when we started Enneagram numbers and Southern raising, and
we find the same things funny that might be mildly inappropriate. And we might have also bonded in, is it San Juan de Laguna, where Anna lives? Yeah. There is basically this mountain.
Oh,
and
gosh.
People were, and it's like you're parallel with the ground when you're walking up it. Mm-hmm. And these girls on our trip were just like, I mean, Laura and I are
running up the hill.
Yeah, we are not tiny. And so they were running and like just having full conversations. And Laura and I are like, I need a lung transplant. We got up to the top of the hill and did the Rocky like fist pump. And we're like, I love you. Like, thank you. We bonded over our discomfort.
Yeah. And I think that and our love for shopping.
And queso.
There's, like I said, there's a lot of things.
I felt connected till you said you find things that are mildly inappropriate funny. Because
so they're wildly.
On second thought, we're best friends. Yeah. Continue.
Yeah. Yeah. We were trying to keep this, on a Christian podcast.
That's right.
So, yeah. Yeah.
And then we've just made every effort to connect and be together. The group of ladies that we connected with in Guatemala, we've since been to Dollywood together.
Stop it.
Guatemala, Dollywood.
Same.
And then
it started as a joke, but then when you tell a joke that much, you
got
to see it through. We decided to see the artisans, so we go on artisan trips. We decided to see the artisans at Dollywood. The fudge makers, the leather stampers, the glass blowers.
That's
so
right,
we did. We
right.
actually went to Dollywood.
And we had airbrush hats, trucker hats, and everything. Like it was the real deal. And then this past spring, the group, minus a few people, maybe Corey was the only one who didn't make it. We went to Orange Beach. So, I mean, we've traveled the world together, right?
Yeah.
Dollywood, Orange Beach, Guatemala.
All pretty similar.
So, and then this summer we also had the opportunity for our families to meet, which was so cool because our kids are, William is a little bit older than my oldest Riley, and then Anna and Eli are a grade apart. And so it was
and we have betrothed.
That was going to be my question. I was like, if you've got opposite genders, I feel like there's been some matchmaking that has happened.
Oh, and they're buddies. They do a little like side eye, little hair flip on Anna's part when they get on FaceTime with Laura and I. So it's pretty sweet.
It's awesome. So
yeah.
That's
I feel
our
like
story.
I just want to like awkwardly butt into this whole friendship group and be like, airbrush me a hat and let's get this party started.
Get me a turkey leg and a trucker hat and call me friends.
Because I feel I don't feel like it's like a whole group until you have a Northeasterner come in with.
Yes, our friend JJ would appreciate you because she is, I think, tired of dealing with this. Yes. Yeah. And then we have our friend Julia, which we had talked to earlier. Is it Julia or Julia? And so we need people like you and our friend JJ to help us to help ourselves.
Girl, I got you. I'm as northern as they come.
Hey, pack your bag.
Watch it. So friends now, obviously you are not just friends with Noonday, but you're also co-hosting a podcast. So I'm going to, whichever one wants to, give me just a quick glimpse because I'm all about celebrating what other people are doing. And so obviously we got podcast listeners who are always like, oh, what are other podcasts we could listen to? So I would just like to preface before we go into this, they've obviously acknowledged they're wildly inappropriate. So I don't want to be held responsible when you go tuning in over there and they don't have an Andy Needham editing out stuff.
Is he for hire?
Yes, but I don't think you can afford him. I sure can't.
Probably not on our budget. Yeah. No, not on our budget. the thing that I do love so much about podcasts, I was telling someone this the other day, that whenever someone listens to a podcast, like there's no like competition, because the only thing that whenever people love podcasts, they want to listen to more, and it's like you saying, people asking you, what's some more podcasts I can listen to? So we are for sure going to share yours. But yeah, we wanted to start something to where we talk about things that not are controversial, but who would know that adult friendship is a super, super controversial issue. It is our most listened to, like hands down, women making friends, because guess what? That's hard. And we joke and laugh. Like, for instance, I always embarrass myself in some form or fashion. I am also an interior designer. We did an episode.
Were we separated at birth?
Maybe. I need to know more. Are you an interior? I see that barn door behind you.
No, like
I saw it too.
Yeah.
It's in my dreams and in my heart is like, I'm like a closet interior. Not that I design closets, but that I just design inside my little.
Yeah. Well, you need to put it out there. And so, I mean, it's been fun, but we did one episode where it was about, designing temporary space. We literally talk about everything. We run the gamut. Laura's in a parsonage. So she, had just moved into this house, and they were super gracious to, make some changes to it. So she got to pick out things. We kind of talked about all of that. But in the middle of that episode, I somehow found it okay to share that I had to get a CT scan, but I forgot to take my Spanx off. And so like I was stuck in the CT scan with all my like leads on and my IV and my Spanx. And it's like, after it's over, I'm like, how did that get put in there? Like, how did that even relate? So between that and talking about friendship, we talked about anxiety, which was another really popular one. And it's always the episodes where we feel very nervous about them, because it's like, this is going to maybe hit a nerve. What if this isn't received well? We are not experts on anything, and then at the end, we are like, okay, we'll see. And we end up getting the most feedback, because it's like when comedians are funny because they say things that everybody's thinking. I think that the episodes that we do that really hit a nerve are the ones that nobody really wants to talk about. Like, why is it hard to make friends as women? Like, when you're a kid, you can go up to someone and be like, my favorite color is purple. I eat boogers, and you're best friends. But it's like, that's frowned upon now, So it's just so that, and then being anxious and by that, on that episode, we were super nervous because we know that depression is that is a real deal, that we don't want to be like, yeah, I feel anxious because, I've got this coming up. Like, we didn't want to fluff it up, but we also don't want to pretend to be some experts. Just more of like, there's so many of us that are struggling with, an anxious heart or worry. And so we kind of run the gamut. I mean, Laura, can you think of anything to add to that?
Well, I think what our hope and our desire with the whole podcast is that, some of these topics are not light and fluffy. They're hard things, but we always try to find something good, something that God's revealed to us that's good, or that we can just dig deep enough to find something good. And that's really where the name came from, is that even in hard times or even in difficult times, there's always some little nugget of good. And so even when we always end the episodes with sharing our favorite things that are like in our, whether it's a book or another podcast or something,
mascara
or my new wallet that I love from Amazon, whatever it is, we share like what's something good. So I think it kind of, even if it is a hard topic, we try to end on, kind of the lighter. What we have heard back from people who listen is, thank you so much for talking about this. I thought I was the only one. Just the me too that comes from sharing and being vulnerable. One, it's just been such a blessing for us, because we've definitely had moments where we're like, life is crazy. Why are we doing this? We're adding one more thing to our plate. Like, but then we get messages and we're like, this is why we're doing this, is because it really is hopefully giving people, a safe space to feel not alone in whatever struggle, or gosh, just to laugh at the millions of stories that Johnna has.
Then maybe they don't feel like their life's that bad,
Yeah, I mean,
another one that we talked about that was really like hit a nail was church hurt. I think that's the most direct messages that we've ever had. But the biggest thing, and we actually had Laura's husband, who we lovingly refer to as the Rev for the Reverend, but we had him kind of come on and talk about the church is not people. I mean, it's made up of people, but it's like you're being hurt by people. So that doesn't mean you leave the church, as a whole, the way God intends the church. And that was really, I mean, hearing people's stories, how they've been hurt, it just reminds us of this is a ministry. What you're doing is a ministry, and ministry looks different ways. But if you are reaching people and sharing God's love and encouraging them to turn to him, that's what matters. Even if it's talking about your Spanx. I mean, listen, I'm just one more example of why you need Jesus.
So obviously just like resonating with you all and what we're doing at Hey Girl, and the name of your podcast is All Things New, correct? All Things Good. All Things New. All Things Good. It's fine. I just butchered it right in your face. I said I'd say something wrong. I didn't necessarily specify. They're about bagels.
Yeah.
Right?
Listen, we'll have a new
bagels and cream cheese.
Some new bagels.
So All Things Good. I love one that part of your podcast, part of your ministry is having these conversations and I think you're right. When we're willing to talk about things that people can resonate with and not feel so alone, like not feel like, oh my goodness. Because I think you end up, whether you mean to or not, we all talk about those things from our own journeys, especially if we're not experts that have studied these things. We're just like, this is my life. This is real. It's messy. And so for me, like mental illness has been a big one because I have wrestled with depression and anxiety, and it's funny to hear you say, like, even though I've walked those journeys, I still get nervous about talking about them because I also know all of these things are complex too. So my journey isn't necessarily going to be someone else's, but I think the enemy loves to use our silence. And like, if he can isolate, I always think about the wolves and the sheep. Like, how does a wolf get away with, he first tries to isolate a sheep from the rest of them. Yeah. And whether or not our stories are exact, stories are those things that connect us. It's this, hey, guess what? Whatever your story is, I know a God that wants to meet you in that place. So for each of you right now, where you're at, what does that look like? I know we mentioned the podcast, but I also know there's more to it than, unless you just podcast 24/7. That's cool. Me too.
That's it. We're a big deal. So,
Johnna, why don't we start with you? What does your race look like right now?
I think I'm just coming off of a season of like burnout, to be honest with you. But over the summer, I kind of took some time off of work to really take care of myself. Now I'm just kind of revving back up. So I do interior design and then the podcast. And I think for me, I had lunch with a girl yesterday and it has just stuck with me. And she was telling me that she's really lonely. And I was like, I struggle with that too. And she's like, I think people think that I have all these friends and I do all these things. And she's like, that's just the way it appears. And that is something that God just kind of like keeps placing on my heart. Like, what is like the way things appear, not what they seem, or, it's just getting past that. And I think that my goal is to always leave someone with a joke, like a smile, a laugh, anything like that, to where they don't feel alone. Because I think I struggle with loneliness, even though I'm outgoing and I am a 2 on the Enneagram. I'm a helper, but I think when you're those things, that can leave you depleted and that can leave you, everybody's like, tell me a joke, do something funny. And you're just like, I'm tapped out. So I think for me right now, it's pouring into others, but turning around and pouring into myself.
All right. So Laura, tell me what's it looking like in your race these days?
Well, and I mentioned this earlier, I worked in ministry. I was the communications coordinator for a nonprofit that did ministry in Haiti and the DR. And during that time, now I've gone back to the classroom. I'm teaching at Mississippi State. I teach a couple of classes for the College of Business. And that's what I did before I worked for the nonprofit too. And I felt like I was calling me to use my public relations marketing skills in a new way. And so I did that for about 5 years and now I've come back. And I think during that time, God was showing me that when he says, love your neighbor, your literal neighbor is okay too. Because in my mind, I was like, love my neighbor means I got to go to Haiti and I got to go to the Dominican Republic and I got to do these things. In some really hard conversations with the Rev and realizing the place where my boys were has kind of brought my focus a little closer to home. And also realizing that I can't walk into my classes in the College of Business and talk about Jesus openly, but that I can still show people Jesus in the way that I interact with them. And if they come and talk to me and they bring it up because of what they've seen, then I have that opportunity to share, about my faith. And that does happen. And I've been so surprised over the years at how many students will come and I have the opportunity just to share about the path that I walked with divorce. And then we're also in the process of adopting.
Wow.
So that's a huge part of our story right now too. We are waiting to be matched. We have completed all of our paperwork, both on the US side and the India side, and we are in the process of reviewing files and looking for the one that God has for us in India. So,
and let's be clear, she's been in this process a long time and has been faithful, and it's been a good opportunity to show the real side, not just the gotcha pictures or the cute pictures coming down an escalator in airport. She's been able to show the real side of the waiting and the letdown. And
I was going to be like, you wrecked her.
It's going to make me cry.
And she made me cry. Yes.
I'm putting it in that category of none of us wants to be called to be that message bearer, but the message needs to be spoken. And for you, again, to have to be in this place where you're willing to talk about that is a big deal. We need more people like you who are willing to not just talk about it, but feel our feelings, but be honest. That it's obviously it's an emotional thing for you. And that's, again, nobody wants to be that person. I would rather have the easy story and have someone else tell this hard story. Okay. I've officially probably offended you at some point, made you cry. We did some laughter. So we've covered a lot of bases. I've asked 1,000 questions. Now we get to flip the script, and you guys are podcasters, so you're used to asking the questions. So I'm giving you one each because I'm afraid if I give Johnna any more than that, I'm going to reveal things about myself that should never be said in public.
Oh, yes.
I'll go first. I've got a question for you. Tell us a little bit, because I think one of the things that we struggle with as far as doing our podcast is balance, finding time around our jobs and our families and all of the other bajillion things that we have going on. So how do you find time to balance kind of what you feel like your calling is with this ministry and everything else that you're doing?
Ooh, okay.
Dang, that was good. That was good.
What do you do this for a living?
I was going to ask about your favorite. I was going to ask, what's your favorite food? Now I got to step it up.
You can ask that.
No.
That's important too.
I am one of those people that is always a firm believer that balance is a myth, and a lot. I don't think that God even introduced balance into the world in creation. When you look at from the very beginning, he created and showed us rhythms and seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that sounds so cliche, but how that shows up for me, or how it's been really helpful for me to kind of my own health, mental, physical, everything, is first, I've learned a lot about my own rhythms, because I think there's kind of the seasons around us, right? Physical seasons. But then there's also the seasons in our own individual lives. But then I also think there's the rhythms of how we're wired. So there's kind of a lot of things playing in. So for me, I am not a marathon runner. Always wanted to be in my mind, I'd be a marathon runner, but I love intervals. I love to sprint and then to catch my breath, and then to sprint and then to catch my breath. And this isn't a metaphor, physically, that's the kind of running that if I'm going to do any, that's it. I realized for myself that actually plays into a lot of who I am in my life. I like the rhythm of going hard and crazy and then resting hard. I don't do as well. And this is individual to me. I don't do as well with kind of the steady lull of like trying to keep it in the middle. I live on like that kind of, I'm a 7. So I'm like, let's ride it high. Okay, bring it back down. For a long time, I think I thought that, and I really wrestled with my own health and my sanity. And I was either bored or constantly feeling like I was trying to pull the reins back, like, oh, don't go too far, too fast. And probably in the last couple of years, and since starting Hey Girl, I've realized that for me, I say all of that to be very specific. This is what I've learned of myself. I do best when I set up my life almost like intervals, and I feel like it's what's healthy for me. So in the podcast world, I do what's called recording seasons. Like for instance, today I have 4 interviews today.
We're not it.
But this is the most important one. And I just
she's probably gonna talk to like a Bible scholar next.
We're done.
Here's what's great about it though. For me, that sound like it used to be like, I can't do that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But here's how my personality works. If I go crazy hard today and I do like 4 interviews, I'm going to love it because I just will eat it up. But I've learned of myself that if I'm going to do that, then tomorrow needs to be a down day for me. Like tomorrow can't be another 4 interviews during the day. Tomorrow needs to be okay, what is something that is life-giving? So for instance, for me, tomorrow will probably include a hike outside with my dog and no people.
So we live a different life. Yeah, we live a very different life.
Or cleaning my house, because like weirdly cleaning is like therapeutic for me, but it's gonna
very different.
It's gonna involve.
Is eating involved in there at all?
Yeah, well, if I had money, shopping might be involved. There are the things I would do if I had a different budget and then what I could afford to do.
Yeah.
But most importantly, it's not going to involve a ton of like extroverted energy people pouring out. Like it's going to be things that fill me. On a bigger scale, we do a lot of things. Like we're running conferences right now. We have this podcast. I've got 2 kids. I'm looking into starting part-time work outside the home. And so my husband and I have similar rhythms. We're going to be crazy for the next 3 or 4, no, more like 4 or 5 weeks, basically till almost the end of November. No weekends off. It's going to be nuts. But November 24th, we're getting on a plane and we're flying to Florida, and then we're going to get on a boat.
Nice.
We're going to be in the Caribbean for 2 weeks. And I won't look at my phone, and I will be doing no podcast. Like none of those things will be happening. And it will be a complete like refresh, refill. And then we'll come home, and winter camp will start right after Christmas, and we'll be going like crazy for 3 months. And then again, like take a week off. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no,
yeah, that was.
I
wrote down. God didn't create it. God didn't introduce balance. He introduced rhythms.
All right, Johnna. No pressure, but that's a pretty good question.
So what is your
what's your favorite color?
Yeah.
Mustard.
That's
yellow.
where it's gonna now. I
it's
like
totally on
yellow.
trend for some fall.
Yes, I like me a mustard yellow. Okay, so you're a 7. What Enneagram number is your husband, and how do you find that y'all's like knowing the Enneagram now, whether a little or a lot? How do you feel like your marriage has like benefited from it?
Well, recently it's stirred up a lot of controversy in our marriage. So thanks for bringing that up, Johnna. I really appreciate it.
Oh, dang. I mean, so I go with the heavy question.
No, truthfully, it's been super helpful, but we are currently in a debate of what his number is. That's where the controversy is.
Okay.
A 3.
What does he think it is?
So he would say 3, wing 2, which truthfully could be it. Don't tell him I said so, even though he'll listen to this. But he's just got a whole lot of 1 in him as well. So my joke right now is that he's a 1.3. Because you can't have a 3 wing when you're a 1, all the things.
No, I know.
But I was like, I don't know. he is a rule follower. He is a do the right thing. He's the amount of times he's told me like, babe, no, we can't do. Whereas I find like literally it fills my soul to break rules. Like where I'm just like, just tell me a rule so I can break it. I find it's life-giving to me to break rules.
Yeah. You're not supposed to bring food in the movie theater. Watch
challenge accepted.
All my popcorn.
Yes, that I made at home.
So it's been most helpful for me in terms of communication, understanding how he communicates, but also learning how I can better communicate with him, because 7s, we can be really spastic, and like 3s are like, oh my Lord, get to the point, woman. And kind of understanding like, okay, I don't need to give him all this information. Like this is what he needs.
I need to tone it.
So it's been good. Until the Enneagram, my line to him was always like holding out my hand. I have to tell them what I'm doing because only you can see it. But I was like holding out my hand and being like, this is my dream. This is you. And then like pounding it to the ground. Because that's what it
He might be a 1.
It always felt like I have these great ideas and you're just crushing them.
Johnna.
Yeah.
You can't throw Will under the bus on that.
No.
Will supports you.
He does. But he's like, is it in
You're
the
welcome,
budget?
Will Hold.
Yeah.
He's the budget.
I should say the budget is the one that's the crusher. It's Dave Ramsey.
Yes.
Dave Ramsey is my crusher.
I love how Johnna's going to work that Dave Ramsey dig in every single episode, whether it's our podcast or somebody else's.
Good.
Get behind me, Dave Ramsey. So yeah, but my husband is a 1, and he does. He supports my dreams fully, like to the point that I'm like, stop making me go after that.
Oh my gosh, we are married to the same man.
Always like, is it in the budget?
But not like Utah style, but like same man, separate.
Not sister-wife style.
And it's my ex-husband. So weird.
Yeah, it's weird. That is
it's the best storyline
This
ever.
circle just got smaller.
No, that is so perfect description. My husband supports me, I would say, to a fault. I've literally told him, I think you're overselling me on this. Like, I don't think I'm as good at this as you think that I am good at this thing.
You're like, I feel like I've given you false advertisement.
So he supports me 1,010%. But the joke is like, he is also, and this is where before Enneagram, I saw the negative side of this, understanding and actually studying it. I'm like, I need this man in my life. Because otherwise I would just have 1,000 dreams that never actually happen.
He's got to tether you a little bit.
He actually, that crushing that I felt like was crushing was actually him molding something that's legit. Yeah. Yeah.
Refining. Like, yes. I love it. I love that visual.
Ladies, this has been more fun than it probably should have been.
Exactly. Laura cried.
I have loved it. I am just officially inviting myself to, all your next Dollywood trips. Seriously, bring it along. I'll drag Christine. It'll be a good time. Christine's my 2.
Bring her on.
So I'm the 7 to her 2. Yes,
she gets
100%. I'll bring her to translate in case I get confused. So
okay. She's like, they want you to thank them right now for unpacking your bag.
Yes, exactly.
That you wadded all your clothes in. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Laura and Johnna, for coming on today and just joining us on Hey Girl. I'm excited for them to hear not just this, but then go check out your podcast and listen and be encouraged as well. So thank you.